Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Wisper leadership series / business talk. I would consider this one business as well. So today we have Teresa with us, and we are going to talk about numbers. But before we get into that, Teresa, do you want to give us a little intro, a little blurb about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on Business Talk. It's great to be here. My name is Teresa Pedigo, and I'm the owner of TA Pedigo and Associates. Provide both business consulting and business coaching, primarily to business owners, but I do work with associations and organizations. My biggest passion is to help those learn their numbers and know what their numbers are in order to make the best decisions for their business. So I've been a business owner for about 6 years now. And prior to that, I spent 23 years in the financial services industry as a bank examiner, a banker, a mortgage person, an auto leasing person, and as a consultant. So wrapping all of that together, those 23 years of my finance degree is what I bring to the business owners today.
Awesome. So we are looking at numbers today. Like I said, I am not a numbers person. So I am probably the person that your normal presentations are targeted for. So why is it important for business owners, but also just people higher up in their business to know their numbers and to know what's going on?
Well, my biggest business crush in the entire world is Marcus Lemonis, the prophet. And so you've heard of him before. I know many people probably have. If you haven't, get on CNBC and watch him or on your computer. But he has many sayings, but his most popular is, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And that is the why right there. You can't know what's going on, in your business. It's going to tell you whether your sales are where you're expecting them to be, if you need to control costs. Basically, it's going to tell you if you're financially successful or not at any point in time. So you do need to know those. Now, I have some business owners that I have talked to or worked with that says, hey, as long as there's money in the checking account to pay payroll and I can cash my check, that's really all I need to know. And maybe they're the lucky ones, because we know that every now and then, even a blind squirrel finds a nut, right? But there's other ones that aren't so fortunate. And then there's some business owners that have really good general knowledge of their numbers, but maybe they're not using them as effectively. So they're missing out on opportunities. Really what I call, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. So we need to know the numbers, but which numbers do you think are the most important? And I'm sure this varies depending on, what industry you're in. If you're, primarily marketing a sales-based business to someone, obviously you want to know your sales. Mm-hmm. But for someone like me, if you said, you need to know these, couple of numbers, these 3 numbers, like what are the top ones to look at?
I would say that, we're going to look at the major category lines on the profit and loss statement, or the P&L, or it was called an income statement at one time. So looking at your gross revenues, your COGS, or cost of goods sold, your gross profit, your total expenses, and then your net income. We're also going to look over on the accounts payable aging to see if we're paying our bills, and the accounts receivable aging to see if people are paying us. And that's where we'll really need to watch, our collections. So if we look at those all high level, and then we come back and start looking at the individual line items that comprise that, then we can see what's going up, what's going down, how do we compare to last year. Then once we get that done, we can move into calculating the ratios, because that's really important too, is looking at the gross profit margin, your current ratio, your working capital, your return on investment. And if you're working with a bank and got a loan, they want to know about that debt service coverage ratio. Okay, that's the most important one to them.
Okay, so I don't know what a lot of those things mean, but I'm going to take your word for it. So who within the company, who would you say are the top people that need to be on top of this? So who needs to know the numbers off the top of their head? If you ask them any given point, what's our revenue for the year? Who are the people that need to know those numbers?
Well, obviously, depending on the size of your business, first, let's start out with like the solopreneur. Obviously, that business owner has to know, right? So we're going to say the business owner. As that business gets a little bit larger, I might have a management team. And so sharing, that management team. Now, it could be not as sophisticated. It could be managers as opposed to, excuse me, a larger company will have a CFO, would be producing those numbers, right? Your CEO, and various committees, such as that to know. Sometimes when we have smaller businesses, the business owner is a little reluctant to share kind of what their numbers are currently and what they are projecting the numbers to. And I can understand that because I'm a very private person, about my numbers as well. But I had a discussion the other day. It's been really proven that if you share that with your managers or your management team or whoever, you so designate, it actually lets them know the path that you want to go down, and they work with you to get you there.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And I know I've heard Nathan say before, he's not a numbers person either. He's an action kind of person. And when we brought on our Mark, our CFO, that it really sort of started to make sense to him that, like you said, if you share these numbers and you know them, it does give you a bit more direction and more of a path of where you're trying to go.
Exactly. I've got a client story, if you don't mind, if I can share one of those. So names and everything have been changed right on this for protect the confidentiality. But I had been working with a business owner, we'll call her Andrea, and we had started just working together regarding learning the financial statements. So the most important ones, the profit and loss, your balance sheet, accounts payable aging, accounts receivable aging, and that cash flow statement. So that's what I'm working, to teach the business owners. So when we were doing that, we'd often find that things would be rolled up into a category, like maybe it just says income. And she had 4 different sources of income. So I said, wouldn't it be a good thing to break those down so where are you making the most money? And how are you putting, say, marketing efforts towards that? Or how expensive is that to provide that service? So we did things like that and broke them farther down for her. And when I came back to do a financial review, she was very tired. And she had been working weekends, which none of us like to do, right? At all. She was missing time with her family, which, that was a big thing. And her staff was getting worn out, and she was seeing it, and she was beginning to hear it. And the business that she runs is very technical in nature. So if any of those walked out, it would be a very hard replacement. So she's like, we're working all so hard. Why isn't the number better than what it is? It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So since we did that breakdown, that we talked about earlier in that income, there's a line item for what would be considered billable income. So I asked her the question again, when we look at ratios, what percentage of time do you think your employee should be billable? Because we know we have to answer the phone and go to the restroom, right? And get a drink of water and things like that. So we're not 100% every hour working. So she gave me a number. Felt pretty comfortable about it. We could take that line item and divide by the hourly rate, and there was a big gap, huge gap, between what she was thinking and what was actually happening. And if we dug deeper into that gap, it would tune to 6 figures that would be laying on the table. 6 figures. So what difference would that make to any business if they could pick up 6 figures? So it's huge. So we then took the next steps and went searching for some reasons for this, put in some corrective action, and lo and behold, that revenue number started going back up, and she was able to not just get 1 but 2 more hires. So we had a happily ever after story. So that's just kind of one of the things of how I help business owners.
Yeah, that does put it into perspective a little bit. And I want to take a second here to ask anyone, if you are watching, give us a comment if you have any questions. We'll get to some questions at the end of the show if you happen to have any. And if not, if you think of a question afterwards when we're finished, come back, leave us a comment. We'll send you an email. We'll get back to you. We'll get you an answer. So let's see. So we've looked at the numbers, we know what we're looking for, but what are we going to do with them? So say I have looked at my numbers, I know where I'm going, but how do I use those to grow my business? You gave us a little bit of an example just now, but more technically speaking, if I'm looking at these, how can I look at them and interpret that into changes that I need to make?
Well, with a lot of times what we want to do, or what I do with my clients, is we want to have a strategic plan or a business plan, right? And a budget. So we want to know kind of where we're going at the beginning of our calendar year or fiscal year, whichever one that is.
Right.
So if we're looking and we're seeing that, then and we're saying, wow, we're getting really tight here. I need more employees. I want to open another location, things like that on expansion. We can begin to put that into that budget. So how have we done? Okay, and 2020 is going to be a crazy year to try to project 2021. Okay, for sure. There's a lot of people that are going to use 2019 numbers.
Yeah.
And take those in. So if we could, use that budget, and we know what our capacity is with our employees and that they're working up to that capacity, then we can begin to say, okay, well, in order to grow the business, we need this much money, and we'd have to increase our sales or revenues by this much to get it. Or maybe if we're getting another location, maybe we need to go look and talk to the banker and get some funds. But then we would know exactly, I need this much. We know what our ask is. Because the banker just doesn't want to know, well, I want to buy a building and I want to expand over here, but I don't know how much it's going to cost to buy it or to fix it up. We would know, by doing that. So we could plan that growth.
Got it. So like I said, I am not a numbers person at all. In college, I took statistics for English majors, which is to say we don't do math. So what advice would you give to somebody like me if I were to move into a position that I needed to know these numbers? How do I, as a person without a numbers brain, sort of make sense of these numbers and keep up with them without getting overwhelmed?
The first thing is get yourself educated. Okay, this is education for sure. And I could say, shameless plug, the easiest way to get your education is give me a call, right? And I'd be happy to work with you on your specific instance. But there's books, out there right now. We got a lot of online courses, right? Since we've switched to that. So there's a lot of good ones that you can get some, basic accounting skills. Right. And things down, and a basic finance class would be really good. There's, tons of podcasts that you can learn from. Yeah, I'm lots of good ones for, your specific line of work or whatever you're working on. So I'd recommend that. The second thing kind of ties into what you said about not getting overwhelmed. Don't think that you have to know every number and what's good or bad about it, and all of those ratios in your head all at once. You need to build. Get your basics, first, and then start to build on them. Because even after I've been doing this all this time, which, makes me feel incredibly old for as many years as it's been, I still learn something. I still learn when I see numbers, change and move, what exactly caused that. Right. So don't try all at once. Get it in there, and then practice what you're doing, because I'll work with business owners and they'll be like, okay, I forgot how do we calculate that gross profit margin again? We did that last month, so you got to keep doing it, and you got to get a business rhythm established. So if you're looking at that, ongoing monthly, then you're less likely to forget, what you're looking at, and how to calculate things. So time slips by. I've had clients that said, we know how important it is. You've told us and showed us, but if you didn't come over here and do it with us, we probably wouldn't stop and look at them.
Yeah. Right. So you mentioned resources of, just practice. Do you have any favorite resources, podcasts, books, recommendations?
Oh, I would say the top one that I am enjoying the most right now is called Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. Okay. He has another one, The Pumpkin Plan, and Fix What's Next. I'm sure he has a ton of other books, but it's very interesting with the Profit First. I run a mastermind group. And so one of the members in there had read the book and began using some of the tools. He told it to another person in the mastermind group, who then told me, and I of course read it and started doing it, and then I passed it on to 2 other clients, and they were working it. So I know this is being recorded, but I'll just be 100% honest. I am not a reader. Okay. It's very hard for me to sit down and read. And then they say, well, why don't you listen to them? I listened to them and I fell asleep.
Yeah.
So, but if I'm working with a book that is actionable,
right,
then it keeps me. And Profit First is, because it's telling you. You can actually hear Michael Michalowicz yell at you, do not go to the next chapter until you complete this task.
Right.
And it takes off a more modern theme of Dave Ramsey's envelope, kind of his procedure. Takes it up a notch. But I think the big revelation that you get out of that book is we always hear revenue minus expenses equal profit, right? If you take these courses, you get these books, you'll see that. And that's the way it's been. But he takes this this new wave approach of looking at it, why it's titled Profit First. Revenue minus profit equals expenses.
Okay.
So it teaches you how to live off of, this much money that you budgeted for your account. If we're just working with a P&L, we see money, all the time. We see that there's money in the checking account. We go out and buy things. But then at the end of the year, we look at that net income. We're saying, well, what is that? Because I don't have that money. Well, it was spent. So he shows a way to put money back for Profit First, for owner compensation, for taxes. So it's a really, really excellent lead. And the second one to that, and I'm like slipping one, I have to look at my library that I can't remember. I'm terrible about the last name, but Book Yourself Solid is really good, especially I'd say the first 4 chapters or so, defining who you want to be your customer, because we all know not everybody is our customer. And so it gives you I think the chapter 1 is an awesome read on getting you to define that and work within that structure.
Okay, awesome. I'll check those out because, like I said, I need a little practice. So I would love to read those at a level to sort of get myself into it.
Sure.
So to close us out here, you gave us some tips on how not to be overwhelmed by the numbers. So are there any other tips or strategies that you would give to somebody to help them stay on top of their numbers, to remember to check in, to know what's going on?
I think one of the biggest struggles is, sometimes people do their books in-house, which is always favorable. Sometimes, we have to go out to a bookkeeper or an accountant. So what I advise and what I caution against is sometimes at the end of the month, you've got to get your things done as the business owner in order to turn it over, okay, to the accountants or the bookkeeper. So you need to get your stuff out fast, within that first few days of the month. I'm not talking week, first few days, because I generally see that it takes about to the second or third week till these get returned.
Okay.
You can push, for that second. Remember, you are the client, don't want to, make any CPAs mad, but bookkeepers, but push for it. Because if you think about it, if there's something that comes up in the numbers, and you're finding about the third week, we're in the third week of October, right? Okay. So if we're just looking at our September financials and we're seeing it in the third week, that means whatever went bad or good for that matter, in September, we're just finding out about it. And that problem is either going to still exist for October, and then it might take us corrective action. So it might go September, October, November, a whole quarter before we could identify it and fix it. So really, keep an eye. If you've got somebody inside that's doing it and you can get it timely, that's great. But if you're using somebody outside, understand what they need, have the expectations defined, what they need to be able to produce these numbers for you and get a time set. is huge.
Okay. Well, great. Let's see. Do we have any questions? We don't have any questions yet. I won't keep you and wait until we do. So like I
Share
said,
one more thing.
yeah, of course.
Okay, so I came up with this. I did a presentation on numbers, and I came up with, this is I know you can't see it. It's how well do you know your numbers assessment.
Okay.
So it's got 10 easy questions, and you answer yes, no, and then add up your yeses, and you can see how you rate to knowing your numbers. So if anybody's interested in taking that and learning more about their numbers, we'll put my contact information somewhere out here. And reach out to me. I'd be glad to share. I like to get input because this is the first time or second time that I've used it, in something. So yeah, I'd like to hear what people have to say.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put a link to that for sure. Do you want to you want to tell us your website, your social pages where we can find you?
Sure. The easiest way on my website is just tapedigo.com. Pedigo is the hardest thing to spell, but it really isn't. It's Pedigo. So tapedigo.com. You can reach me at Teresa@tapedigo.com. And the phone number is 217-433-6809. So that's about it. Probably texting or calling is the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. So we have you coming back. You're coming back next week, right? On the 28th.
Yes.
To talk with Amanda about the DISC assessments. So that'll be a good one. If anyone's interested, please come back for that one. We'll have the information on our Facebook page. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for today. If you have anything else you want to add, otherwise we'll go ahead and wrap it up and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, it sounds great. Thanks again for having me. It was really a wonderful opportunity, and everybody out there, get to know your numbers.
Yep. Thank you so much, Teresa, and we will see you next week. Make sure you come back for that. We also have a YouTube channel for our Wisper University now. It's just youtube.com/Wisper University. Come follow us, subscribe there, and if not, come back next week for our next live show.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds great. I'll look forward to it.
Awesome. Bye-bye. All right.